Welcome to this edition of Labor Vision. I'm Bob Delaney, Executive Director of the Institute for Labor Studies and Research. Labor Vision, a production of the Institute, focuses on topics of importance to working Rhode Island families. We hope you enjoy this evening's edition.
My name is Jim Parisi. I'm a field rep with the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals, and I am Vice President of the Rhode Island Labor History Society. On behalf of Kathy Collette, our President, and Matt DiTomaso, our Vice President, and Linda Leclerc, who keeps using that word interim for Secretary, and all the other members of the Executive Board, thank you for joining us this evening. We like this event for a lot of reasons. It's at a great time of year, right before Labor Day. We can spend some time with friends and students of labor history to remember what was as far as the labor movement, and it helps us propel us forward to what could be as well. I want to spend a few minutes and talk about what the Labor History Society did this past year. Starting on Labor Day itself, unfortunately, weather interfered, and the annual commemoration at Moshassuck Cemetery in Central Falls got postponed. But we are going to reprise the speech prepared by Pat Brady this coming Labor Day at 10 a.m. at Moshassuck Cemetery in the city of Central Falls. And I know there are some flyers on your tables that has the details of that event this coming Labor Day. Please join us for that. In the fall, this past fall, we held a program in November to commemorate Labor's Congressman and bricklayer John Fogarty, and we thank Dr. Pat Conley for giving us his time in that informative talk. Our own Executive Board members, Scott Malloy and Ryan McIntyre, offered a presentation on labor rights and voting rights activist Seth Luther, and that was back in October. We were able to get some discount tickets from Trinity Rep in the fall, and in October we had close to 100 Rhode Island Labor History Society members go to see that moving, inspirational, and somewhat depressing play, Grapes of Wrath. The Rhode Island Labor History Society continues to spur on labor history with our students by going to the Rhode Island History Day program at Providence College every spring, held in April, where Pat Brady and others take a look at all the projects the students do and give $100 checks, which are really attractive to students for those who do projects related to labor history. And I encourage all of you in the education field to encourage your students, if they're doing history projects, History Day projects, to take a look at labor history. There is a little pot of gold at the end of that rainbow. We produced several short videos highlighting labor history that were shown on Labor Vision, and I thank Mary Harrington, our board member, for that. For this coming year, as I mentioned a moment ago, we are going to have our speech at Moshassuck Cemetery commemorating the 1934 textile strike in which people were killed. And speaking of people who were killed, we are planning a commemoration this fall on the 40th anniversary of the death of Velma Schessler. She was an AFSCME member who was killed, hit by a car on a picket line over at IMH. We are planning a fun and tasty event commemorating the 100-year anniversary of what's known as the Pasta Wars, which are the Macaroni War riots, which happened on Federal Hill, and we'll be eating pasta and talking labor history on Federal Hill later this fall. Ryan McIntyre, our board member, has prepared a PowerPoint reviewing Rhode Island Labor History Society, and we're going to be announcing that and presenting that this year as well. So this is a popular event, and a lot of people contributed to it. I'd like to thank Linda Leclerc, who did the planning for the food. Thank you, Linda. Brother Jim Riley always does a great job with decorations and balloons. Thank you from the UFCW. We always appreciate having Paul and Roger of Labor Vision making sure that this event is communicated to the entire community. Thank you. And Mike D'Amico got some help raising the banners this year. Thank you, John McDonald and Mo Marita for helping out with the banners. The supervisor has to get some credit, even at a Labor History Society event. And speaking of food, this event is catered by Via Roma, and Dominic of Via Roma saw that we had a lot of extra food, and he's putting it and packaging it up downstairs, so you're going to see it available downstairs for those of you who want to avail themselves of that. So, oh, that's worth a round of applause. Food's good. So we remember. Prior MCs of this event have been fond of remembering our dear friend Chuck Schwartz, who was so instrumental in the formation of the Labor History Society, and I'm no different. I'm not asking for a moment of silence. I'm just asking you to think of Chuck Schwartz as we gather here today. Make sure he's in our thoughts and in our hearts. We remember past honorees of the Rhode Island Labor History Society, and there are a few since this is number 27. And I ask those who've previously been honored by the Labor History Society to stand and get recognized by everyone else. Please stand up. I certainly want to remember all those who give their time and effort to keep Labor History Society alive, to keep labor history alive in our state. We are all volunteer board. We meet, for some reason, on Friday afternoons at 5:30. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the wine and beer that we consume with our pizza. But I'd like to thank all the members of the Rhode Island Labor History Society Executive Board to please stand and be recognized. And while we're recognizing people who are active in our society, I want to take a moment to thank publicly Kathy Collette for her years of service as our president. Kathy has announced recently at our executive board meeting that she is not going to run for re-election after a decade-long stint of leading the Rhode Island Labor History Society. She's going to be stepping down. Kathy was recently honored as one of the select few to be placed in the Rhode Island Heritage Hall of Fame, one of the few labor leaders who are put in that body. And Kathy, congratulations for that. It's just terrific to have someone who's given their whole working life, in this case in the labor movement through AFSCME, all the way up through AFSCME National and the International Labor Movement, who would, after her alleged retirement, come back home and spend all the time and effort keeping Labor History Society alive here. Thank you again, Kathy. In an effort of keeping things direct and to the point, we're now going to jump to the honorees, and I'd like you to please welcome East Providence teacher, union leader, NEA officer, and community political activist Val Lawson to introduce our first nominee.
Good evening. It's my pleasure this evening and honor to introduce John Faria. John is deeply committed to what matters in life. And for John, that means his family, his community, and the labor movement. For those of you who don't know John, he's the gentleman in the corner of the room telling a story, very animated and loud, with his IBEW lapel pin. He's been a member of the IBEW for 45 years. His journey began in the labor movement in 1978, when he was elected business manager of Local 1203. He served in this capacity for 18 years. He was then appointed as an international representative for the New England area in 1996, and this is a position he currently holds. At the same time, John has been an active member in the AFL-CIO. He currently sits on its executive board. And one of John's most noteworthy achievements was his role in chairing Working East Providence. But at the end of the day, I'd like to thank him personally for his support and guidance as a local leader, and congratulate my dear friend and brother in receiving this Rhode Island Labor History Award. Congratulations, John.
President Collette, my good friend Scott Malloy, Executive Board of the organization, which is Rhode Island Labor History Society, I want to thank you very much. I'm humbled for the award this evening. Thank you very much. In addition to that, I would like to certainly congratulate the three recipients this evening, which you notice that I'm getting old, I kind of forget, but that's the only speech that I have, Steve Murphy, because he has told me earlier, how's your speech? But anyway, I certainly want to congratulate Fran Harris, Ken Rivard, and Steve Smith. I go back with Steve Smith when he was on the House. This is back when he first was elected as a state representative. So therefore, I want to congratulate them all, give them a nice round of applause. I want to talk a little bit about corporate greed in America. And you tell me, Kathy, when I'm done. I don't mind the bargaining process. I think it's fun. We all know that. I don't have to teach you, because you're all union leaders. You know how to bang a contract. You know how to massage a contract at the table. You know how to get it done. But the biggest disappointment that anyone can have, and that's what saddens me, bothers the hell out of me, is these companies moving out of state. And the IBEW has lost 8,000 to 10,000 jobs, electrical manufacturing jobs, in the state of Rhode Island. And let me tell you something, it is corporate greed. It had nothing to do with NAFTA. What that had to do was down south, because we're competing with one another. But then down south is not good enough. Then they go to Mexico, they go to China. And we currently have companies here now that are making the same product, but they're not greedy. They're happy with their employees. But some of these companies, there's about, I get Roy Carino here, we're at 3,000 members. You think they move by mistake? Of course, the minute that they merge companies somewhere else, the stock goes up. We all know that. I've done so many effects bargaining, and this is what's frustrating on this business. I did a company without going on, and I'll shut up in a second, but you need to know this. Take it easy. I was assigned by my boss, Frank Carroll, to do a contract in Andover, Massachusetts. When at negotiations, we banged the contract, was stuck at a hotel for a couple of weeks, we reached a contract. With good faith, we bargained a contract, we walk out of there shaking hands. There's 220 employees, and I may say this, one of the best contracts, not the contract, one of the best wages, benefits, probably in the whole IBEW in New England. Because I work out of the 2nd District. The 2nd District covers all New England with the boss. That's 3 times Frank Carroll. What bothered me, and I'll finish, I get the assignment, we got the contract. management said to me, this is Smith & Nephew, a company in the medical industry, a very, very successful company. We did a research in Washington. At the end, I'm told, he says, John, I want you to know, and to the business manager, I want you to know that we are going to add 40 new jobs. Well, I submitted a report to the boss that we're going to gain, it's like organizing 40 new jobs. Of course you're happy, employees are happy, because our responsibility is really to provide the dignity and respect on the job side. I'm a firm believer with that. When I walk out of that negotiations, I was 10 foot tall, because I was happy the members were pleased with the contract. 6 months after, I'm at Dale Light in Warwick, Rhode Island. We got a phone call, me and the business manager. Well, it's a sad day. I says, what do you mean it's a sad day? I mean, it's always, I thought it was a good day. He says, well, we're talking about phasing out the plant. I says, what? He says, wait a minute. We did a research. You guys, look how successful you were. And then you let us know that you're phasing out the facility? Anyway, we went back in to do the fax bargaining. What is sad that what bothers the hell out of me is, we did your fax bargaining. People did well with your fax bargaining. I'm talking about the severance package, the medical, and everything else. And I says, Tom, I got a problem with this. Great relationship. You're telling me we're going to hire 40 new jobs. I send a report to my boss, because we all have bosses, that's how it is. Who's your boss? You don't know, you never know. And you know what he said? You know what he said? Guess what, John? We are making money. If that's not corporate greed, I don't know what it is. We are making money, but the board of directors, they want more. When you walk out of there, you can imagine how you feel when you're on a business, bargaining contracts, you all do that. And to me, walking out of there and making a presentation, because we provide the service. We provide the service through the FL-CIO, the rapid program, the dislocated worker program, the training. It's not enough. When you get someone that comes to you and says, John, I've worked for this company for 35 years. I lost my job. I got nowhere to go. Crime. That's what really frustrates me the most, is when you're talking about bargaining, your fax bargaining. Brothers and sisters, thank you very much. God bless you, and God bless the labor movement.
Thank you and congratulations. For our next presentation, which may be a little shorter, I'm not so sure. Bob Walsh, Executive Director of the ANEA Rhode Island.
Thank you, Jim. They weren't groaning at you. They thought that was a height joke, and not about me. You know, how embarrassed am I? Fran's story is just the same as John's story, so I don't really have to go through the entire thing. And I'll save you the cutaway. Welcome to the second hour of the Rhode Island Labor History Awards for those of you viewing on Labor Vision. And finally, I was lucky enough to meet Fran Harris during my foolish venture running for office in 1992. And there she was, loyally sitting at the bar, trying to get a pro-union candidate elected to office, and dragged there by mutual friends. And I've known her since, and she's been a good and loyal union member and a good and loyal NEA member. And this is a recognition that's long overdue. Now, she might not go as long as John, but that's okay. Fran, come on up and get your well-deserved recognition.
And to the Labor History Society, thank you for this tonight. You know, as labor leaders, you all know, we work tirelessly for our members. And we don't do it because tonight's going to happen. We do it because we have this passion, we believe in it, and we do it because it's the right thing for our members. And it is very humbling, and it is really an honor. And I know you saw everyone stand up before. My state president, Larry Pirtle, executive director Bob Walsh, former vice president of NEA, Ray Pouliot, Mary Jo Pouliot, who's about to be president of NEA retired. So I am very honored to join that group of people. My journey at NEA, as Bob told you, began in 1972. And since that time, as he also has mentioned, I have served about numerous capacities, many different things. I have had incredible opportunities, and I have met some of the most amazing people, many of who have become close personal friends. I have to say, I love teaching. I love my kids. I love the enthusiasm they have for learning. And I love when that little 5-year-old who's been struggling comes up to me when suddenly he realizes that he's getting it. And he's all excited, he's doing well, and says, "Miss Harris, I'm doing good." Well, I didn't correct his grammar, and I would not do that to a child at that time. And then you have the other one, that you have to turn your head so you don't laugh out loud, who says, "Oh shit, I have the same snack I had yesterday." My passion for teaching, along with my passion for NEA, has gone hand in hand. And that combination, I believe, has helped me grow as a teacher and helped me grow as a union leader. And I worry sometimes about what's going to happen with new teachers coming into the profession. Will they be able to stay as long as well, not many people stay as long as I have, so but it drives me crazy sometimes when I hear people say, "Well, you know, unions serve their purpose, but we don't need them anymore." And I say, wrong. We need unions, and we need strong unions. If we just look at what's happening across the country, they're attacking our collective bargaining rights, they're attacking teacher tenure and due process, they're attempting privatization, and the list goes on. When you look at our own state, teacher morale is at an all-time low. We have overabundance of paperwork, we have excessive testing, we have an evaluation system, excuse me, that is killing us. And thank God we have people like Greg Murray in the legislature who worked to at least give us some relief on that. But then we have a commissioner of education. Get the gist, Frank? I know. And even though that law passed, she has now sent out directives or guidelines to all of the school committees, superintendents. So we go to the bargaining table, and we're still fighting for what the law says. And she is somebody that is our biggest thorn, and she just doesn't get it. We're actually fighting sometimes just to maintain that promise of public education for everyone. So we have our work to do. We have our work cut out for us. We have teachers who came into the profession and all the battles had been fought. They came in and took for granted everything we worked so hard to achieve. They don't know we went on strike. Thank you. They don't know we went on strike for things like preparation time. They don't know we had to fight so there was the teachers, the experts who were writing curriculum. And then we had to fight to make sure the teachers got paid when they worked after school or in the summer to write that curriculum. They take things for granted, they give them away easily. Maybe it's an administrator who's intimidating them, and that happens. Maybe it's because they don't have the history. We have rights being given away at the bargaining table. Again, they don't have the history. But whose fault is that? That's where we fail. And that's where we need to get the message out, and we need to do something for our members and for these new people coming in. We negotiate mentor induction programs for new teachers so that they are successful in the classroom. And yet, what do we do for the union? We don't do what we need to do anymore to make sure they understand the role of the union and the importance of the union and the importance of them, excuse me, being active members. So my journey has been a very rewarding one, and it's not over yet. It's in my blood. NEA is part of me, as my family will tell you, and I will always be involved in some way. And I can't believe I'm going to do this, especially since I'm choking, but I have one last thing. I noticed when I looked at the words to Solidarity Forever, I didn't see anything that clearly talked about education. So I needed to do that. So this is a one-night thing, Scott. You don't have to change anything, but I give you this verse. It's going to be hard enough to get through it, so I need you. Last line, the union makes us strong. You have to sing it with me. So here it is. I can't believe I'm doing this. Okay. We will educate our students. They're depending on us now to raise our voices, keep the promise there was there for you and me. It's me and you, so it rhymes with two. Fight for public education. Together we will see it through. For the union makes us strong. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Labor Vision. We appreciate your input and encourage your comments. Labor Vision can be seen on this channel 3 times each week: Tuesday at 7 p.m., Thursday at 8 p.m., and Saturday at 5 p.m. Welcome to this edition of Labor Vision. I'm Bob Delaney, Executive Director of the Institute for Labor Studies and Research. Labor Vision, a production of the Institute, focuses on topics of importance to working Rhode Island families. We hope you enjoy this evening's edition.
So here, your Congressman, Jim Langevin.
Well, thank you, Sheldon, for the introduction and for your great words. And I am just so proud to be here today with my great colleagues, and I think the best congressional delegation in the country, which I feel so privileged to be a part of, led by our senior Senator Jack Reed, again, along with Senator Whitehouse and my good friend in the House of Representatives, David Cicilline. So I am thrilled to be here to join with John Penurio, the president of RIARA, who does such a wonderful job on behalf of our seniors, and to you, John, also not only thank you for your work, but also a big happy birthday as well. How about another round of applause for John? And Rich Testa, I want to just welcome you to Rhode Island today. Thank you for your words, but most importantly, your work on behalf of seniors. It's important, and I'm grateful that we're partnering with you here today on this very momentous occasion. And of course, let me recognize George Nee and thank him for all the work that he does on behalf of working families in Rhode Island. So thank you, George. Well, let me also thank Karen Testa for hosting us here today. Thank you for letting us stop by at this great senior center. And Clay Pell, great to see you. I know Seth Magaziner was here, or is here. And of course, Mayor Lombardi, great to be in North Providence here today. Mayor Lombardi. But this really is a wonderful, wonderful milestone to celebrate. We all know how important Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid are to our seniors, to people with disabilities, to people who otherwise would not enjoy good quality health care if it were left just to in the hands of the private sector, or if it were ever privatized. Social Security would not be there as the guarantee that it is. But we're here to tell you that we continue to fight to preserve Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. It's a contract that we have made with the American people, with our seniors, not only now, but for future generations. And I can tell you that we will never allow those programs to ever be other than what they are, the contract that was made with all of you, with all of our seniors, both past, present, and future. So, you know, when FDR signed the Social Security Act into law in 1935, he called it a cornerstone, a foundation of a structure to be maintained and built upon by and for future generations, and I could not agree more. Social Security began as more than just a safety net. It was a contract, as I said, a promise that America's seniors would live with the dignity and the security that they've earned through a lifetime of hard work. That still holds true today, as always. Over time, we expanded that promise to people with disabilities, low-income families, and children. Through the enactment of Medicare and Medicaid, to quote, we planted the seeds of compassion and duty, as LBJ so eloquently put it, to provide more Americans with the health care only the very wealthy had previously been able to afford. It took decades of hard work to build these contracts, and it's up to us to ensure that we honor them now and always. One of the greatest privileges of my job is working with passionate citizens, of course, and advocates such as yourselves right here in this room, who work tirelessly to protect the programs on which our retired, disabled, and our disadvantaged citizens rely. It's your commitment and strong leadership that I take back to Washington to fight for Social Security, to fight for Medicare, to fight for Medicaid. And while some would like nothing more than to erase the gains that we've made, I'm absolutely confident that we will persevere. I know that we will never allow Social Security to be undermined or privatized. We will never allow Medicare to be turned into a voucher program, and we will never, ever allow Medicaid to be undermined by turning it into a block grant. We're in this together, and together I know we're going to make sure that these programs are around for our grandparents, our parents, our children, and our grandchildren, and with your support and commitment, I know that we can make sure that my colleagues in Washington get that message loud and clear. And again, I'm just so proud to be a part of a congressional delegation here in Rhode Island that gets it, and we go forward together. So thank you, everybody. Happy birthday to Social Security. And it is now my privilege to turn it over to my junior colleague, whose district we're in today, the Congressman of the 1st Congressional District, Congressman David Cicilline.
Good afternoon. I am really delighted to be here. First, to say thank you to Karen for hosting us and for the outstanding work that you do here at the North Providence Senior Center. You have been, we have the privilege of visiting senior centers all across the state, but I know that you have the best leader here, and let's give Karen a big round of applause. And it's wonderful to be with you, John, on your birthday, and thank you for everything that you do to raise awareness about the importance of fighting to protect Social Security and Medicare. Rich Fiesta, it's an honor to have you in Rhode Island. Thank you for being here to be part of this celebration. I'm, of course, thrilled to be with all of my senior colleagues, Senator Reid, Senator Whitehouse, and Congressman Langevin, and really proud to be part of the best delegation in America. So thank you all for being here. And George Nee, who has been such a powerful voice for working Rhode Islanders and working Americans, and in every important fight to help raise the quality of life for people in our state and to be sure people have access to good paying jobs. So thank you for being that voice, George. Let's give him another big round of applause. And it's great to be with Councilman Lynch and Clay Pell, and I know Seth Magaziner was here earlier. But we're here mostly to celebrate Medicare and Social Security. And I know you have heard me speak about this a lot. Social Security and Medicare were created because they reflect our values as a country. We created Medicare because we decided that when you reached a certain age, you should have access to quality, affordable health care. And we created Social Security because we decided when you reached a certain age and had worked a certain number of years, you should be guaranteed a retirement where you could live with dignity and have your basic needs be met. We should be incredibly proud of these two programs, and we should do everything we can to make sure that they're for today's beneficiaries and for every future generation. They're two of the things that have made this country great, that have built the middle class of America, and that distinguish America from virtually every other country in the world. Now, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, led by Paul Ryan, they kind of scowl at these programs. You've heard them say, we need entitlement reform. Well, first of all, we don't need reform. These programs work, and they work well. And second of all, they're not entitlements. They're earned benefits. You've received Medicare and Social Security because you've worked your whole life, you've paid into the system, and you've earned those benefits. No one's giving you a handout. And so we need to change that language. And the second thing I want to say is that the truth is the Republicans are proposing turning Medicare into a voucher. But that voucher doesn't keep pace with the increased cost of health care. So over time, it shifts health care costs onto seniors and away from the government. A terrible idea. So we have to fight against that proposal. It was made again this year. The Republicans voted for it. Fortunately, the Senate will never take that bill up, and they've been stopping that. But that fight continues. We've got to protect Medicare. With respect to Social Security, while there's been a lot of discussion about cutting the benefits, privatizing it, change CPI, the truth is what many of us are fighting for is how do we actually increase Social Security? Because when Social Security was created, as most of you know, it was created as one leg of a three-legged stool. People had their savings, they had the pension they got from their private employment, and they had Social Security to supplement that. Well, more and more people are seeing their private pensions eliminated because companies are doing away with them. People have used up their savings to get through tough times or get their kids to college or whatever. And more Rhode Islanders and more Americans are actually relying on Social Security as the sole source of their retirement income. So we can either pretend it's still 1950 and it's one leg of a three-legged stool, or we can address this and say, how do we actually raise Social Security so it actually provides enough for people to live on? And so there's legislation that I'm a proud co-sponsor of in the House that will ensure that there's a cost of living adjustment every single year, it's guaranteed, and that the cost of living adjustment actually looks at the cost of living for seniors, what you spend money on, housing, medicine, food, all those things. And it does that by lifting the cap that John mentioned earlier, or Rich mentioned earlier, so that you can also extend the life of Social Security for 25 years. So there are proposals, and I think what we really continue to fight for is how do we have an honest conversation of how we increase Social Security and make it so that it works today for those who are relying on it for their retirement income. But this is something that our whole delegation believes in strongly, as was mentioned. I will continue to fight every single day as long as I'm in Congress to protect and strengthen both Medicare and Social Security. And thank you all for being here and being part of this. And I'll end by acknowledging our host mayor, Mayor Lombardi, and former Mayor Foster, Dick Foster. Thank you again for your strong support of this.
Okay, did everybody get a raffle ticket, a little raffle ticket? I'm going to ask everybody if we can get the people with the cameras to come up front for a minute. That includes you too, Jenny. Up behind me here. Okay, what I would like everybody to do is, you see the signs that you have in your hands? Thank you. I'd like everybody to hold that sign up nice and high so we can get a picture of everybody with the sign. Hold your signs up. Okay, people, take pictures.
Welcome to this segment of Labor Vision. I'm Bob Delaney. Over the last several summers, we've been fortunate to be able to have discussions around the issues of safety in the workplace and the environment in general in which people find themselves. Our guest has been Dr. Lee Okarowski, and we're fortunate again to have him back with us on Labor Vision. Dr. Okarowski is the medical director for the Occupational and Environmental Health Center of Rhode Island. The mission of the center is to prevent occupational and environmental injury and disease and to promote occupational and environmental health. One of the issues that we wanted to talk about today was the issue around drugs in the work environment. And I'd like to welcome Dr. Okarowski back to Labor Vision and have a conversation with him about this in particular. Welcome, Lee.
Glad to be back.
We've talked about heat stroke in the past. We've talked about a number of issues that are central to things that most people don't really give a lot of thought to in the workplace. One of the issues that you and I talked about prior to this show focused on some of the information that you're finding about changes that are taking place around the issue of drug use in the environment. Tell me what you're noticing and what impact that's tending to have for employees and employers.
Yeah, Bob, we've definitely seen a change over the last, I'd say about 5 to 10 years. In the late 90s, early 2000s, we saw a real focus on the drug-free workplace, particularly as it applied to illicit or street drugs. But what we're now seeing is actually a decline in illicit and street drugs in the workplace and a rising problem with prescription medications and prescription medications of abuse and how it's impacting health and safety for both employees and employers. So it's a rising problem. We're seeing a real shift. It's a topic that's frequently now in the news. You'll see discussions about abuse of prescription opioids, opiates, other medications, and it is starting to have a real effect on how we look at a drug-free workplace and what some of the strategies are about how we can ensure health and safety for employees and employers.
In seeing both sides of the coin from the employer and the employee, how do we strike that balance? How do we make sure that the needs of both are met?
That's a great question, and in reality, the tools many employers, many employees have already exist, and those are the old policies that were developed in the late 90s, early 2000s for illicit drugs. And it's really a re-look at an employer's policies in the workplace and how they address substance abuse, safety and health. And the real goals are clearly to balance the right of the employer, but also the rights of the employee. And some key topics that always remain is the need to know on the employer side but also respecting the rights of the privacy for the employee. And it's also a key issue in any program to balance the needs of detection with the balance of respect for employee needs. And it's often a difficult topic for employees to address, and the key message is you have to create a program which sponsors a dialogue that has some transparency, but also stays to some key core fundamentals, which is a philosophy that alcohol and substance abuse is not prohibited in the workplace, but also a key cornerstone of that policy needs to be an encouragement that discovering issues with employees is not always a punitive issue. It's not to punish folks, it's to get employees the help they need to overcome and rehabilitate from any substance abuse problems they may have. And that's really a key cornerstone of any program philosophy. Many employers really create programs that are purely focused on punitive, aka punishment, for the employee that may have a substance abuse program. And I think that is a program that typically falls short. I think the real focus needs to balance the issues of health and safety, but also rehabilitation. And that what that does is encourage folks to come forward, get the treatment they need. And that's a win-win, because the employee gets appropriate care, can maintain employment, and then the employer actually can provide a valuable service, access to health care, access to appropriate treatment for folks that do have issues.
It's interesting that you would make that comparison, because I think it's absolutely critical that any policy has both sides, the policy to be able to detect it, but for the employer to feel safe in that environment and know that the employers will work with them to find some plan, some strategy for them to make a transition to rehabilitation. And so in terms of the kinds of changes that you're seeing in the kinds of drugs that are misused in the workplace environment, let's talk for a minute about the change that you're seeing. What was it and what is it?
10 to 15 years ago, we saw a lot of abuse of street drugs. We saw, in the workplace drug testing programs that do exist, particularly in the construction industry. You saw things like marijuana, cocaine, amphetamines. Those drugs are still issues, but what we're seeing escalate extremely rapidly, I mean sometimes as much as 7 to 10 times what we've seen over the last 10 years, is prescription medications, prescription opiates, painkillers, things like OxyContin, other issues, other medications of abuse, things like certain benzodiazepines, sedatives. The big issue with these is they can clearly impact health and safety. They can decrease ability to function, decrease ability to perform. The complexity arises in the fact that many of these prescription medications can be, in fact, and often are, prescribed by a healthcare provider. So employers are often unclear about how to approach these issues with their employees. But again, the issue of health and safety and a drug-free environment is paramount. We have to protect all employees, both the impaired and the ones that may be impacted by a coworker who's impaired. But the strategies still remain the same, and many employers need to start opening the dialogue with their employees, union representatives, about how we're going to address these issues. But the core fundamentals remain the same. It's an appropriate policy that balances the needs for health and safety with appropriate early detection, removal of an impaired employee, but then transitions to a longer view and how we can help rehabilitate an impaired employee who may have an issue, and getting those folks either connected through an employee assistance program or appropriate health care. And it's becoming more and more of an issue financially, because as employers take a bigger and bigger role in healthcare plans, it's important to make sure that employers are really maximizing their use of appropriate services about how they can refer and get employees the help they need. And when I talk to many HR representatives, they recognize the problem, but they really feel they're not necessarily as well educated in the area of how to deal with prescription medications of abuse as they were, say, the illicit abuse. And where the complexity comes in again is when the big issue was abuse of illicit drugs, it was often easy and clear. It was, somebody's using a medication that's illegal, therefore our options of terminating the employer were much clearer. Now that these medications are often for very legitimate purposes, but still may cause impairment in the workplace, the issues become a lot more complex. And that's where a lot of health professionals, occupational medicine physicians, substance abuse professionals can really provide some clear expertise in how to tease out legitimate issues related to health, legitimate medication from medications that may be in fact causing impairment in the workplace and creating safety risks. Nationally, we're seeing this at the multi-state level. Washington State's a leader in this issue. We're also seeing a lot of movement at the federal level. Department of Transportation is keenly watching this issue as it applies to health and safety on the roadways. So there is a national momentum growing with this issue, and there's a growing body of tools both for employees and employers and union representatives about how to address these issues, bring these issues to the table. And I guess the big message on how do we approach this is bringing it, for lack of a better term, out of the dark and into the light and putting these issues on the table. At the same time, many people are nervous about that because, again, patient-employee confidentiality, respect, those things clearly have to be addressed so people feel safe about bringing these issues to the forefront and talking about them both at the general and specific levels.
I think it's important to know the point that you made is that many of these plans and policies, probably with their foundation in alcohol abuse in the workplace, are basically in place, and what we really need to do is revisit them and take a look at them collaboratively so that we have employers, employees, and labor leaders looking at them to say, look, we all agree health and safety is a major issue, but we all agree that we have the responsibility to respect the right of the employee. Are there any signs, and I know this is probably a very broad question, but for anybody watching this segment, if you're an employer, what are the most obvious signs that they may see of somebody who's using this medication improperly, overly using it? What might they notice that they could go forward and have a discussion with the employee about maybe taking a look at the issue?
You're touching on the number one hurdle for many employers, which is they feel very uncomfortable about detection. And one of the things we counsel employers on is, and health and safety professionals, is it's no different from illicit drugs of abuse, alcohol. You just have to keep a vigilant eye for folks that demonstrate signs of impairment, and that's particularly patterns of difficulty staying focused at the workplace, arriving late routinely, folks that don't seem to be able to get through their normal functions. But the key for me really has to be when somebody starts to see somebody in a safety sensitive position, that's when health and safety professionals really need to be brought to the forefront, and employers need to do a better job of recognizing the valuable role that health and safety professionals play in this, because many of them do take, and there are courses available both federally and state for health and safety professionals on how to detect the impaired employee. And that's really what I counsel many large employers, construction employers, to go for, is to get folks trained in early detection. Once again, we don't want to be overly punitive, and the other side of this is that we have to ensure that folks aren't being singled out because there may be personality or other issues and somebody's reacting against an employee for a suspicion when it's may or may not be warranted. And that's where I really think we need to focus on training, getting health and safety professionals more comfortable with objective assessments. There are a variety of tools and courses that can be used to teach individuals how to recognize impairment, and then what are the strategies. And the typical strategies are when it's a health and safety issue and there are real risks, it's removal, and not necessarily in a punitive way, and just it's a timeout and saying, all right, we're detecting an issue, we're not detecting normal behavior, we're not detecting you performing your job in a manner that's to be expected and ensures health and safety. Pull them out, pull them to the sideline, and then start the process. But the process, you know, is a complex one, but it, again, starts with dusting off the old policy and saying, let's really readdress this. Do we have a system that's fair and equitable about how we address the impaired employee? What are the steps we use? Do we have appropriate employee assistance programs for these folks if they have issues? Do we have appropriate referral basis of physicians and or mental health professionals that if this becomes an issue we can refer to? So it's being proactive, and then when we're proactive, we can react when the issue comes to the forefront, and we're not left saying, what do we do now? We've actually thought through this process.
I want to thank you for your comments today. I think that they're timely and they're important. I think your reference to working with health and safety professionals, in linking with the medical community, in recognition of the need for employers, employees, and organized labor to work together on this project is absolutely central to its success. And I think what's important as well is for people to know that if they want more information, they can call here, get more information, get some direction. But most importantly, I want to thank you for your taking the time today to have the conversation with us on an issue that I think is not only changing, but growing. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's definitely a growing topic. I think it needs to be addressed. But I think the positive take-home message is the statistics and data now coming out is a positive one for people that step forward, that are able to, the vast majority of people that are willing to address their issues, get appropriate treatment, can stay employed, can remain safe. And as I stated before, it really is a win-win for all those involved. But there's much to do in this area, and it's clearly timely, and hopefully we can continue to make progress and ensure health and safety in the workplace. Our
guest today has been Dr. Lee Okarowski, who is the medical director here at the Occupational and Environmental Health Center of Rhode Island. For more information on this issue and other issues related to health and safety in the workplace, feel free to call the center here, and we'll put the number on the screen. Thank you for watching. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Labor Vision. We appreciate your input and encourage your comments. Labor Vision can be seen on this channel 3 times each week: Tuesday at 7 p.m., Thursday at 8 p.m., and Saturday at 5 p.m.